The DNA of 5 men was found in John O'Keefe's shoe. 5 men.
How many contributors of DNA were there?
3 contributors.
And again, this was John O'Keefe's genes, correct?
Based on the description, yes.
So he was one of the 3 contributors.
He was included in the profile, yeah.
Who were the other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody. The DNA profile from this item is at least 570 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals.
He's got DNA of 2 unknown individuals. Could it be Brian Albert, Colin Albert, Brian Higgins? Definitely 2 of those 3.
John's laying there, his left and his right, and I approach John from the left. That's where the street is. And he had a piece of glass.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Buckle Up. It's the Law with attorney Larry Foreman. Folks, today we are going to be doing the DNA lab analyst, Andre Porto. We're going to start with a direct examination by Brennan with a little bit of a clip from Karen Reed, and then we're going to dive right into Andre Porto, the DNA analyst. So without further ado, let's go.
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to read a stipulation agreement between the Commonwealth and the defense.
Okay.
And the stipulation between the parties is as follows. Now comes the Commonwealth and Karen Reed, the defendant, in the above captioned matter. Both parties respectfully stipulate to the following. The 2 Massachusetts State Police troopers present at the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, on January 31st, 2022, were Trooper Keefe and Trooper Watson. Former Trooper Michael Proctor was not present.
Yes, thank you.
With that, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce and play clip number 21.
So John's laying there, his left and his right, and I approach John from the left. That's where the street is. And he had a piece of glass, like, perched on his nose, like, just wedged like a splinter would be. And I just pulled it, and as soon as I pulled it, it just gushed blood down his face.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth calls Andre Porto to the stand.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your last name for the court?
Yeah, my name is Andre Porto, last name spelled P-O-R-T-O.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a forensic scientist too in the DNA unit at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab.
Now, at some point, were you assigned to perform some work on a lab case number 22-02184 pertaining to this defendant, Karen Reed?
Yes, I did.
And what type of work in general terms were you assigned to do in this case?
I was assigned to do the DNA analysis process.
And that was on several items, is that correct?
Correct.
Could you explain to the jury the sort of the process that you used to analyze evidence in this case?
Extraction, quantitation, amplification, and detection.
There was a known standard that was done in this case, specifically in item number 8-1.1.1, is that correct?
Correct.
And did another analyst test and report the results from the known blood standard from that item 8-1.1.1?
Correct.
And how is that done?
It will go through the 4 steps: extraction, quantitation, amplification, detection, and then the analysts that did the interpretation and reported that out, the known standard out, they went through the profile to make sure that it's from one person or a single source. And once that went through the review process that I explained, so technical and administrative review, and once that was all completed, the standard was available to be used for comparisons.
And to whom was that known standard identified as belonging to?
John O'Keefe.
Now, you used the word in there as far as a single source. Can you explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is based on your training and experience?
Sure. So a single source is just a DNA profile that has one contributor to it. So only one person contributed DNA to that profile.
Now, sir, starting with item 3-1.1,
Oh, really?
What was that a sample from?
That was a sample from taillight passenger.
And from a specific vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if any, information were you given as to that vehicle that the swab from the taillight was from?
So the license plate was 3G6684. Wait, I'm sorry, 3GC684.
Were you able to generate a DNA profile from that item?
I was.
And from your comparative analysis from that question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. And the DNA profile from this item is at least 510 non-alien times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, that profile, in addition to Mr. O'Keefe's profile, also had 2 unknown contributors, correct?
Correct.
Now, was that item also submitted to an outside vendor named Bodie Technologies for further analysis?
Correct.
Now, regarding item 3-6, what is the description of that item?
Yeah, so 3-6 is a root end of hair from exterior passenger side rear panel.
And is that the same vehicle as far as the taillight sample?
Correct.
Now, turning your attention to item 3-2.1.1, what is the description related to that item?
It's a sample from the exterior of broken drinking glass.
And is there any further indication as far as the broken drinking glass, as far as where it was recovered?
Oh, yeah, 34 Fairview Road.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from this item, the drinking glass?
Yes, I was.
And from your comparative analysis from this question item to that of the known standard of John O'Keefe, what did you conclude?
Yeah, so the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA. The DNA profile from this item is at least 530 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals. This supports an inclusion.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to another item, 7-1.2.1, what is the description related to that item?
Sample from stain A on upper right leg of jeans.
And is there any further indication as to whom those genes belong to?
John O'Keefe.
Now, were you also able to generate a DNA profile from this item, the stain A on the upper right leg of Mr. O'Keefe's genes?
Yes, I was.
What did you conclude with reference to that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA.
Oh.
Contributor 1 is suitable for comparison, and due to limited information, contributors 2 and 3 are not suitable for comparison. The DNA profile from this item is at least 570 non-million times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from 3 unknown, unrelated individuals.
I mean, if you needed more proof than that, folks, there you have it. He's got DNA of 2 unknown individuals. Could it be Brian Albert, Colin Albert, Brian Higgins? Definitely 2 of those 3. They know who these individuals are. They just decided not to test them specifically. It's just, oh, it's unknown DNA. We're just going to leave it at that. No reason to go further. And the sample is probably sufficiently corrupt by now that it is completely untestable. Son of a...
This provides support for an inclusion.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-1.3.1, what is the description related to that item?
Sample from stain B on upper right leg of jeans.
And same genes as the previous item?
Yes.
What did you conclude?
Yep, so the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors, including male DNA.
Now, with each of those items that you just testified about as far as the genes, the question items from the stains on Mr. O'Keefe's genes, those were each located on the right leg, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you also perform some analysis on item 7-1.7.1?
I did.
What did you conclude?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 4 contributors, including male DNA.
Wow.
The DNA profile from this item is at least 53 septillion times more likely if it originated from John O'Keefe and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown, unrelated individuals. This provides support for an inclusion.
What's listed as number 12 in your report, but item 7-18.4.1, did you do some testing on that item as well?
Yes. Sample from stain C on top front of Gray's long sleeve shirt.
What did you conclude?
So the male DNA profile was interpreted as originated from a single contributor.
Now, sir, if I could take you down to listed as 15 in your report, but did you do some testing on item 7-18.14.1?
I did.
And what was the description associated with that item?
So sample from stain L on back bottom right of Gray long sleeve shirt.
What did you conclude?
So the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 2 contributors, including male DNA.
And item 7-18.7.1, do you see that as well?
Yes. Sample from stain G on back left sleeve of Gray long sleeve shirt.
And what did you conclude based on the generation of those profiles with those 4 items?
Yeah, so the profiles that were generated were not suitable for comparison. It was a mixture of at least 5 contributors. And at the DNA unit, we validated, basically we tested and make sure that our protocols were we can only interpret mixtures of up to 4 contributors. So I determined that there were 5 contributors, so that makes it too complex for us to do comparisons to it. So it's not suitable for comparison for that reason.
Just to be clear, the item that you're referring to with the 5 possible contributors, that's a shoot, correct?
Correct.
Right,
Good morning.
yeah. All right, Yannetti.
-1.1, which you've identified as a sample from the passenger side.
And I'm
taillight.
sorry, I thought I earlier said that Brennan is going to be doing the direct. I misspoke. It was Lally, of course, as we recognize his voice from the first trial. Brennan started the video, that's why I thought he was going to do the direct. But anyway, Yannetti is now in for the cross. This is where it gets interesting, folks. Let's watch.
Of the vehicle. Can you orient yourself in your report to that item?
Yes.
And that, of course, was the passenger side taillight that was attached to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
You were never asked to do any DNA comparison on any pieces of taillight connected with this case, correct?
Let me check my other report. For taillight, there was another item that was item 3-3.1, which is sampled from apparent glass on rear bumper, if that's what you're referencing.
Okay, so if I suggested to you that the taillight was plastic, that glass wouldn't have been the taillight, correct?
I don't have, that's beyond my scope of testing.
Gotcha. Okay. With regard to the passenger side taillight, you found that there were 3 contributors of DNA to that taillight attached to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
One of those contributors appeared to be John O'Keefe. Is that fair to say?
He was included into the profile.
With regard to the other 2 contributors, who were they?
They could be anybody.
Were you ever asked to compare DNA samples from either Canton Police Detective Kevin Albert or Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz to the DNA profile that you analyzed from that passenger side taillight?
I was not.
Now, with regard to the broken drinking glass, which is item 3-2.1.1, do you see that in your report?
I do.
With regard to that, you came up with a DNA profile that also had 3 contributors, correct?
Correct.
One of those contributors appeared to be John O'Keefe, correct?
He was included, correct.
Who were the other 2 contributors?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Were you ever asked with regard to that broken drinking glass to compare the DNA profile that you analyzed with the DNA of either Boston Police Sergeant Brian Albert or ATF agent Brian Higgins?
I was not.
Oh.
Now, with regard to 7.1.2.1, or maybe it's 7-1.2.1, that's the stain A from the upper right leg of the jeans?
Correct.
All right. And you were aware, or you were told that those were the jeans that John O'Keefe was wearing on the morning in question when he was found?
Based on the sample description, that's what it seems.
All right. And it turned out that his DNA was on his own jeans, correct?
He was included in the profile.
All right. And that was unsurprising to you, correct?
I mean, the jury heard it.
And with
Keep going,
regard to
Yannetti.
that item, you found that there were 3 contributors of DNA, correct?
Correct.
With John O'Keefe being one of them.
He was included in the profile, yes.
And who were the
Remember Jackson's opening? The DNA of 5 men was found in John O'Keefe's shoe. 5 men. This is crucial because this is now where Yannetti is going. Now on cross-examination with the guy that they were promised is going to be cross-examined in this trial. Now you have to deliver on that promise. Oh, this is good.
other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Let's move on to stain B, also from the upper right leg of the jeans. That is 7-1.3.1. You see that in your report.
Another defense witness.
When
Just
you,
flipped. Just watch.
Found a DNA profile. How many contributors of DNA were there?
3 contributors.
All right. And again, this was John O'Keefe's jeans, correct?
Based on the description, yes.
So he was one of the 3 contributors.
He was included in the profile, yeah.
Who were the other 2?
I don't know. They could be anybody.
Moving on to stain C from the upper right leg of the jeans. 7-1.4.1. You see that in your report?
I do.
With regard to the DNA profile that you analyzed there, how many contributors of DNA were there to that profile?
At least 2, and it was interpreted as 2 contributors.
And again, this is the same pair of jeans that he was found in, correct?
Based on the description, yes.
And you said at least 2 contributors. It actually could have been more than 2.
Based on our protocols, I had to call it 2, and we determined it as 2, but it could be more than 2, yes.
Okay. Well, let's pay attention to the one that was not John O'Keefe, at least that one. Who contributed that DNA to his pants?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
Moving on to stain D, which is 7-1.5.1. And if I can just put my glasses on to make sure I've read my own writing correctly. Actually, is it 7-15-1? Did I get that wrong the first time?
D?
I'm sorry?
Do you mean
stain
stain
D?
D?
Stain D.
Stain D is 7-1.5.1.
Oh, I had it right the first time. Okay. With regard to that stain, you also got a DNA profile, and how many contributors were there to that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 3 contributors.
And again, this is John O'Keefe's genes, correct?
Correct.
He was one of the contributors to his own genes, correct?
He was included in the profile.
And with regard to that stain on the upper right leg of his jeans, who contributed the DNA to who were the other 2 contributors of DNA to that stain?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
And then finally, with regard to that upper right leg of the jeans, there was also a stain E, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors did you find to that DNA profile?
2 contributors.
One of which was John O'Keefe to his own genes, correct?
He was included, yes.
And who was the other contributor to that stain on the jeans?
It could be anybody. I don't know.
And by the way, just for the record, that was 7.1.6.1?
7-1.61.
7-1.6.1. Thank you, sir. Okay, now, with regard to the unstained area of the exterior of the jeans, do you see item 7-1.7.1?
Yes.
You found a DNA profile with regard to that unstained area as well, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors of DNA were there to that unstained area of the jeans?
I interpreted it as 4 contributors.
And John O'Keefe was one of those, correct?
He was included in the profile.
His own genes.
Based on the description, yes.
Who were the other 3 contributors to that DNA profile?
I don't know. It could be anybody.
What I want to know is, across all contributors, is there a match from stain to stain? Like, let's say, stain A's got 2 contributors, stain B has 3 contributors, stain C has 2 contributors, stain D has 4 contributors. I'm curious if there's any consistency between like stains A, B, C, and D. Yes, you have one as John O'Keefe clearly, and this one is person A, and this one is John O'Keefe person A, and there's person B. And if there's a uniformity of DNA from stain to stain, you know what I mean? So it's not just like, because we know it's true, but I haven't heard it yet. I don't know if this guy's sufficiently qualified to answer that question. Maybe why Yannetti hasn't asked it yet, but he's not there yet. But that's the burning question in my mind, and I imagine it's probably the burning question in the jurors' minds. Is this DNA consistent across stains? Meaning, is it the same person, or is it like just like a bunch of people? Like, 5 contributors here, 4 here, 3 here, 2 here. Do you stack them? That's like 17 different people. Or do you run them concurrent? Like that stain, that's the same person. That stain, that stain, that stain, and that stain, that DNA is the same other person. You see what I'm talking about?
And before we move on to the sneaker, I just wanted to ask you a question about the passenger side taillight that I neglected to ask you. That was the one where there were 3 contributors, correct? And again, I'm going back to 3-1.1.
Correct.
Sorry to skip around, sir. I'm not trying to make this
all
more confusing than it is. With regard to the passenger side taillight and that DNA profile, are you able to determine when that DNA was deposited on the passenger side taillight that was attached to the vehicle?
No, I'm not.
Are you able to testify with any certainty that it was deposited there, say, on January 28th or 29th of 2022?
No, I can't.
So, consistent with your analysis of it, are you able to say whether it occurred prior to January 28th of 2022?
No, I can't.
Were you aware that that vehicle was John O'Keefe's girlfriend's vehicle?
I was not.
Were you provided any
What?
information about just how often he had been in and around that vehicle prior to January 28th of 2022?
He didn't know?
So moving on to 7-3.1, which was the right instep of the sneaker, correct? You see that in your report?
Yep.
With regard to that particular stain, you noted how many contributors of DNA?
Yeah, it was interpreted as at least 5 contributors.
And when you have interpreted as at least 5 contributors, what does that do to your ability to find out who contributed that DNA?
So based on our protocols, we're not able to do any comparisons to any mixtures that are 5 or more contributors, so it's not suitable for comparisons.
Okay, which means that with regard to the sneaker at least, you couldn't even say whether John O'Keefe's DNA was on it, correct?
Correct.
And with regard to all 5, do you have any idea who contributed the DNA to that sneaker?
No, I don't.
Suspicious.
Now, moving on to, I just have a couple more for you, sir. Moving on to what is labeled as stain L, which is 7-18.14.1, I believe. Do you see that in your report?
I do?
And that was a stain on the back bottom of his long sleeve shirt, correct?
Correct.
And were you told that the long sleeve shirt was his outer clothing when he was found?
I don't believe so.
How many contributors to that stain on the back bottom of his long sleeve shirt did you find in that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 2 contributors.
And did you make any match with regard to either of those contributors or both?
I did comparisons, and John O'Keefe was included as one of the contributors.
Okay, so John O'Keefe was a contributor of DNA to his own long sleeve shirt, correct?
Based on the descriptions, correct.
All right, and whose other DNA was on that shirt?
I don't know.
And then finally, with regard to 7-18.17.1, that was an unstained area of the exterior of that shirt, correct? That same long sleeve shirt.
Correct.
And you tested that and got a DNA profile, correct?
Correct.
How many contributors were there to that DNA profile?
I interpret it as 2 contributors.
Was John O'Keefe one of them?
He was included as one of the contributors.
Okay, so his DNA was found on his own shirt, correct?
Based on the description, correct.
And who contributed the other DNA profile to John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
I don't know.
Could be anybody. Why didn't you say that again?
With regard to
It's your favorite
any
phrase.
of the stains on the upper right leg of the jeans, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you've discussed here today. Were you ever asked to
Here we go.
compare the DNA profile with the DNA profiles of either Brian Higgins or Brian Albert?
Oh.
I was not.
And your answer was you were not?
I was not.
Did anybody ever provide you with DNA profiles of Brian Higgins or Brian Albert?
Sustain to that.
I just have one more question for you, Mr. Porto, and I do want to thank you for answering all my questions here today. You wrote reports on your analysis of all the items and the work that you did on this case,
I did.
and you are directed pursuant to protocol to address those reports to somebody, correct?
Correct.
Who was it that you sent the reports to in this case?
Proctor?
Sustaining the objection.
Did you send those reports to Michael Proctor?
Sustain.
Well,
Jurors, strike the question.
why?
I have nothing for
Oh my God. Why, Bev? Why? Why would you give them everything that they wanted? The defense would love that. Did you give them to Michael Proctor? Yes. No, it doesn't matter. But when you give the defense exactly what they want, hiding the truth, keeping information from the jury no like that. The jury know, like that judge, the jury know, like that prosecutor. They wanted to hear what the defense was going to ask. They wanted to hear what the defense is going to get information out of, what's his name, Porto. He was actually a pretty decent witness, honestly. I don't think he's in on it. He doesn't seem like he is. He's just this honest scientist, nerdy kid, you know, just doing his job. I don't think he didn't even know it was John O'Keefe and like that was his girlfriend that he was testing and whatnot. Like, he knows nothing. He was given no information. He was just given, here, test these. Okay, done. What's next? Go on to the next assignment. Do this now. Okay, that's him. That's Porto. So Porto is just a very harmless individual. He doesn't know anything. He only does what he is instructed to do. He doesn't veer. He doesn't deviate. He has no mind of his own. He's you know, you push the Porto button, Porto does stuff. That's how that works. So anyway, don't forget to like this video, comment below, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody.